We are
It's that time again.
Yes, it is. We're in hour 13. Oh my gosh, hour 13.
We're just starting. We're fine.
My name is Angela Fobbs, and I'm the chair of the Global Black Caucus.
And I'm Ann Hesse, and I'm the chair of the Global Women's Caucus. And welcome to the last bit of what we're doing today. End of the day for Angela and me.
Well, it's not quite the end of the day, Ann. You're jumping the gun.
We're just beginning a new phase in a new region. So
yes, but we've got influencing environmental policy through Democrats Abroad with Jim Christiansen. Yes, Jim Christiansen has been a management consultant specializing in strategy management for 30 years. He has worked for many energy companies and also for companies dealing with significant environmental issues. He is one of the founding members of the Energy and Environmental Policy Committees, which were formed in Democrats Abroad France in 2005. He's been active in these committees ever since. He will be speaking today on how to influence environmental policy through working with Democrats Abroad. Welcome once again, Jim. Thank you for joining us today.
Sure, thank you.
You're a little low. Your volume is a little low. Can you somehow turn yourself up, the volume? Don't turn up.
Closer to the mic.
Yeah. That's a little bit better. Come as close as possible.
Okay. All right.
You're perfect, right where you were before. It was perfect.
Okay. What I'm going to talk about is what we have done in France.
No, we can't hear you. Somehow we can't hear you.
Okay. Let me check my settings.
We heard you so well before, earlier.
Yeah, you sounded perfect before. That's so weird. You know what? While we're waiting, we'll let you get your technical difficulties settled up, and we will just watch a quick video. How about that?
Okay.
This is from the Women's Caucus. Hold on one second. Let me...
Now, staying calm, yo. It's time to move it. Change it up now. It's time to move in a different direction. Don't care what they say, not gonna obey. It's time to move in a different direction. We're gonna run now, not staying calm, yo. It's time to move in a different direction. Take your dreams and make them reality. You got. We're gonna run now, change this life now. It's time to move in a different direction. Don't care what they see, I'm gonna live free. It's time to move.
Okay. So everybody should vote, please. And now, please go ahead, Jim.
Now I change the settings. No?
No, that was it. That was it.
Great.
You did something. It was really loud and clear.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, I hope this works. What I'm going to be talking to you about is what people like you and me did over the last 15 years. In other words, things that every Democrats Abroad member can get involved in. I'll have some slides. Basically, the slides are notes from the presentation, because the presentation is a whole lot of words. But I hope that this inspires people to get more involved, not just in being out to vote, which is enormously important, but in pushing specific policies as well. Because that's what we've been doing for 15 years. Now, let me see if I can share my screen. There. I'm going to talk about influencing environmental and energy policy through Democrats abroad, as each and every one of us can. Starting with what DA has done in the past.
Are you trying to share your screen?
Is it not working?
No. Click the share button and then pick the item. It has to be open, whatever it is so then just pick it from that list of things there, like
okay,
pictographs, and then click share.
Pity on the top. Okay. Let's see. I see. Okay, I missed this step.
Awesome.
I have not been a panelist on Zoom before. So we talk first about what data has done in the past, what issues we're concerned about now, how we can exert influence in the future, why it matters, and how that's all you out there, can contribute. To start off, back in 2005, after the frustration of George W. Bush's second election, Connie Burke founded an environment and energy policy group in Paris. I was part of it. We've had roughly between 15 and 20 active members over time, though not everybody at the same time. The first thing we focused on was very similar to what Mark Weiss was talking about earlier today.
Jim?
The whole language and thinking.
Jim?
Yes?
Maybe try unplugging your headset and taking it off.
Are you still having trouble with the sound?
Oh, now you're perfect.
Okay, that's weird because I was using the headset the other time too.
Yeah, but somehow it's perfect now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we were talking about changing the language about environmental policy. At the time, most of the world still viewed environmental policy as a pure cost. But a few people were starting to talk about smart growth, creating new jobs, creating new industries, creating green jobs. And that's what we tried to promote. We developed policy papers, we developed presentations. We made presentations in France, and one of our members made the tour of European capitals and made presentations to DA groups and others elsewhere in Europe. We weren't the only ones doing this, but gradually the language changed and we think we helped. That evolved. The situation changed in 2008 with the Obama election. And from 2009 to 2010, we had a Democratic president and a Democratic Congress. One of the main influences, one of the main initiatives in that Congress was what was called the Support American Clean Energy and Security Act, also known as the Waxman-Markey Act, after the names of its sponsors. We actually had a professional lobbyist living in Paris at that time, so we created an organization in parallel to the Democrats Abroad policy group to do lobbying of Congress. We decided to do what we could to push this legislation in a progressive direction, add more things on energy efficiency, enhance the material and renewable energy, and so on. We also lobbied members of Congress to vote for the whole thing. Now, unfortunately, as you may know, this legislation did not pass. Republicans won Congress in 2010, and we had to turn our energies in another direction because we could see that this bill was not going to get through Republican Congress. So from 2010 to 2016, we focused again on communication and education. We sponsored many lectures, panel discussions, and workshops on environment and on energy policy. This was, again, to educate the public, to educate ourselves, to learn more about the issues, to learn more about how to turn these policies in a progressive direction and to prepare policy for the future. In 2016, 3 of us were involved in writing environment and energy planks for the global DA platform. The planks that we drafted here in Paris were proposed to the Global DA Convention in 2016 in Berlin and largely accepted with a few modifications. The next step, sadly, we did not win the election in 2016. So 2016 to the present, we've done quite a lot of additional communication and education. And now, well, now we're preparing for the fall elections in 2020 and hopefully for the Democratic government that will take over in January 2021. How are we preparing? Well, once again, since there's a concentration of talent and interest in Paris, 5 of us in Paris were involved in drafting the 2020 DA platform planks on energy and environment policy. And that group included Cara Maisano, Dana Powers, Ron Steenblick, Alicia Fisher, and myself. Our first draft went through a long, grueling review and editing process. I think there were 5 drafts in all, plus a few revisions on the final draft. But currently the draft is ready to go out for public comment, which will happen soon. I'd encourage you all to read it when it is published on the DA website, comment on it, and then those comments will be taken into account and the planks will be voted on, discussed and voted on at the Democrats Abroad Global Convention, doubtless a web convention in mid-May. That platform provides marching orders for what we are most concerned about. And there are 4, we clustered those into 4 major groups: climate change, other energy issues, the EPA, and other environmental issues. I'll give a little more detail on each of these subjects. Under climate change, clearly the first thing people think about is our sustainable energy systems, specifically supporting renewable energy, encouraging even more energy efficiency. And we saw in one of Mark's graphs how much of a difference energy efficiency can make when California continued its emphasis on energy efficiency while the rest of the US went off in the 1980s in a very much different direction and lost the ball on energy efficiency. Other things that seem very obvious: reducing fossil fuel subsidies. We could go into more detail here, but in the interest of time, I'll move on. A second major thing is methods of sequestering carbon. We emphasize in the platform that it's increasingly understood that changing agricultural practices can create carbon sinks in the soil. Building healthy soil and sequestering carbon in the soil are generally the same thing. And the great thing is that farmers are becoming more and more conscious of the need to build and maintain healthy soil on their farms if they are interested in being farmers for more than a generation, passing farms on to their children. So new farming methods such as complex crop rotations, cover crops, organic fertilizers, and so on are coming into more and more common use. Further things, a no-brainer, rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. It's appalling that the Trump administration left this completely unneeded. We need to rejoin and work with other countries again. Fourth, we're concerned with developing disaster mitigation methods for climate-related disasters. This includes floods, it includes fires, it includes any other kind of disaster that's related to tornadoes, hurricanes, related to disturbances in our climate system. And we want all these things to happen, from sustainable energy to agriculture, et cetera, all to happen in means that are consistent with social justice. That is, justice for minority and poor communities, which tend to feel the greatest impact of environmental pollution. Justice for women. We heard quite a lot about how climate change impacts women yesterday when Cara, Alyssa, and Dana led a panel on climate change in women. So all this consistent with social justice. The second subject, the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. This agency, very important agency, around since the 1970s, has been greatly weakened by the Trump administration. We need to strengthen and empower it again. We need to establish the polluters pay principle in the law. It may surprise some of you that this is not already established, but it's not. There's no, apart from very specific provisions, there's no general provision that polluters need to be the ones who pay for the damages that they create in the environment. Third, we endorsed a ban on glyphosate, which is the active ingredient of Roundup, an extremely widely used agricultural chemical, available also for home use in the United States. Many European countries are well ahead of us on this, either having banned glyphosate or planning on banning it. There's currently court cases in the United States brought by people who feel their cancers, their other health problems have been brought on by years of use of glyphosate, which the manufacturer, of course, claimed was completely not dangerous for the users. But these and other toxic chemicals that cause cancer among users and other things need to be banned. Another aspect of policy that we are pushing: test new chemicals for toxicity before they are introduced into the environment, not after. Again, the European Union is well ahead of us on this. They've had legislation requiring this for 15 or more years now, I believe since 2001 or 2002. So we need to catch up. And it may be a surprise that chemical companies can simply introduce something into the market, assert that it is non-toxic, and it's only after it's been introduced into the environment and proved to have toxic effects that any recourse can be taken against them. We would like to change that priority so that the non-toxicity has to be proven first. A third area, other environmental issues. This is a collection of a variety of things that we feel are very important for the environment, but they don't fit under the climate change rubric. That includes strengthening protections for endangered species, establishing protections for coral reefs and primordial forests. The word forest may be hidden behind the videos here, but primordial forests meaning virgin forests or forests that have not been cut, forests that are have not been managed but are still habitats for a wide variety of species, much as the Amazon is. There are a very few small such forests in the United States, and they should be protected. Third, support agricultural practices that reduce pollution from agricultural sources. Now, this is a little different than simple sequestration of carbon in the soil. We use so much fertilizer, we use so much toxic pesticides, insecticides, and so on agricultural land. And this is not as well regulated as chemicals used in industry. We use so much fertilizer and chemicals on agricultural land that much of it washes off, pollutes rivers, pollutes streams, pollutes lakes, and does several things. It can cause toxic algae blooms, such as occurred in Lake Erie several years ago. It can cause dead zones in the ocean, such as occur regularly off the mouth of the Mississippi River in the Gulf of Mexico. And it caused much local pollution. It's not just the agricultural chemicals, but also combined concentrated animal feeding operations where 10,000, 20,000 hogs, for instance, can all be concentrated in an area of a few acres and fed there. And you can imagine the amount of waste that they produce. That waste produces methane plumes, despite attempts to control it and regulations on where it can be put. Some of it leaks into the environment, pollutes streams, pollutes groundwater, et cetera. Another one of our other environmental issues is to limit or eliminate plastic waste. This is a problem that has become increasingly apparent as we use more and more plastic, and we're discovering there are huge plastic islands, whatever you call them, plastic vortexes in the ocean, isolated areas in the Pacific where uninhabited islands have huge amounts of plastic on their beaches because it simply drifts there. Plastic is found in Greenland where no human has ever lived, etc. The plastic, when it can take a long time to decompose, but it can also leach chemicals that harm our hormone systems, that harm the hormone systems of fish, etc. It can have a lot of negative impacts on the environment, so we need to get some kind of control on plastic waste, perhaps by changing our whole system for the use of plastic. Now, the next section, I'm going to talk a bit about how we can exert influence on the future. One of the things we can do as members of Democrats Abroad is we can talk, we can communicate, we can study these issues, we can educate ourselves, set up workshops, set up discussion groups, set up seminars, etc. In Paris, at times we've had these monthly, sometimes it's more like 2 every 6 months, but we've tried to keep up with this for 15 years now to maintain people's level of education about what these issues are, what the means of dealing with them are, and why it's important. Because why it's important is one of the ways we can motivate people to vote. So educating ourselves and communicating what we learn to others is very important. With all the web tools we have now, there are more and more ways to communicate. So we can do this globally. We can inform the public not only via lectures, seminars, and workshops that are held locally, but perhaps doing this, such as we're doing today, via global workshops. Why not? We can also develop articles, working papers, publish things. We're doing some publication back in 2009, 2010. One of our members is a journalist and publishes now and then when she can get articles placed. And but why not set up a hub? There's an embryonic idea that was proposed as we were writing the platform, and we have not been able to develop it yet. But why not set up a global hub for Democrats abroad to share ideas, working papers, articles, etc., on environmental and energy-related issues, to create presentations that people can use in other geographies, to work together, to organize letter writing campaigns, etc. We could take this in any direction we wish. Why not? Again, I say this is still in the idea stage, so any and all of you can influence this as we develop it. Why does this matter? Well, the biggest thing is environmental policy has been under continuous attack by the Trump administration and by many, many, many other Republicans at the state and local level ever since Trump took office. Actually, the attack began 30 or 40 years ago, but it's been accelerated to such an extent under Trump that it is almost unbelievable. For instance, I could elaborate more on this later during the question time if we have time. But for instance, the Trump administration has completely disempowered the Environmental Protection Agency because they say companies cannot be bothered to monitor their pollution or to worry about it during the current economic crisis.
In fact, he's telling companies, you don't even need to track pollution now. We think that's too much work for you now. You don't have to track your emissions. They've been tracking emissions for 40 or 50 years. Republicans at the state and local level are doing what they can at their level, and it's not pretty. This isn't just happening in environmental energy policy. Some of you may have heard that Trump wants to reduce payroll taxes, a way of getting more money to people. Well, that means reducing the money going into Medicare and into Social Security, because Social Security and Medicare are funded by payroll taxes. So it's just another aspect of the Republicans' attack on Social Security and Medicare. I've collected 30 articles on their attacks on environment and energy policy. There's a long list of what they're doing, and it's not pretty. The best way to stop them is to vote them out of office, disempower them completely. So getting out the vote, ensuring voting rights are both extremely important. And this is a very important, this is a once a decade election where the state legislators who are elected this fall will be the ones who design the congressional and the state legislative districts for the decade of the 2020s. And if these districts are gerrymandered as badly as they were after the 2010 election, we'll be in trouble during the next decade. But if we can get Democratic control of more and more state legislatures, we won't have situations like we have in Wisconsin, where the votes for the state legislature in the last election, 53% went to Democratic candidates, but Democratic candidates only won 36% of the seats. That's due to gerrymandering, packing all Democrats into a few districts and letting Republicans have small but large enough majorities in all the rest of the districts. And it's an appalling practice, but they've gotten away with it. I haven't mentioned in writing, the Supreme Court and other courts. Another aspect of the Republicans' attack is to pack the courts with judges who say environmental policy should not take precedence over corporate rights. The corporate rights of property, they think, the conservative judges think, should take precedence over environmental policy. And the Republican Supreme Court has also winked its eye at gerrymandering. So we need to have a president in office who will appoint much more progressive judges and a Democratic Senate that will approve them. So what can you do? What can we do? What can we all do? We can learn more about the issues, develop expertise in an issue, publicize any issue you care about, lead or participate in local and regional workshops and presentations on that issue. Get out the vote, fight voter suppression by getting out the vote and supporting any Democratic initiatives to support voting rights. These are all very important. All these things work together to support each and every Democratic issue. And finally, participate in any environment and energy initiatives, any DA initiatives you're able to set up locally. Participate in your country. Take the initiative in your country. Why not? Most of us who've been doing this in France have full-time jobs. You know, I've had a full-time job pretty much the whole time. This is my hobby. My hobby is now taking over my job. So I'm doing less and less pay and more of this. But, you know, everybody can do something with the time they have available, and everything helps. Finally, to summarize, we need a mass movement to put our ideas into practice. So let's all work together to build the movement so we can move forward together. And thank you. So I'd be happy to hear any questions.
Angela, do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question, but first I have a statement. You mentioned that it's not the law that you test chemicals before they're introduced. How can that even be possible? That just seems dumb, like something, I don't know, someone who wasn't capable of thinking something past step one would think of.
I wish I was a lawyer and I could speak a bit more authoritatively, but my understanding of the situation is that if a chemical company is introducing a new chemical into the environment, there are certain restrictions about what they introduce. They have to do some tests. They can do those tests internally. They can pay a local university to do them. It's been shown that the funding source for an academic study has a big influence on the outcome. In other words, and they can shop for tests. They can have 3 people do tests and only publicize the one, only use the one that says it's safe. And bear in mind that there are 20,000, 30,000 or more. When I looked last, I mean, I was much more active in the chemical area 15 years ago. At that time, there were around 30,000 chemicals in use. And there were several thousand more coming out each year. The testing burden is significant, and the chemical companies at that time were arguing very strongly, we can't afford to test to that level before we put things out into the environment. After all, it's your responsibility to show there's harm. It's not our responsibility to show that it's safe.
Yes, but that's
So
nonsense.
it's very limited, very low bar that something new has to get over.
It's
now,
an incredibly low bar, and it's if I, as a citizen, and I live in Germany, all right, let's say I buy a can of bug spray, just Raid, you know, they sell that in Germany too.
Of course.
And I want to dispose of the can that it's in. I have to actually take it to a special place, a special recycling center. Paint, all sorts of, you know, just normal household chemicals. I have to do something special. But in America, if I'm going to introduce some kind of chemical that could kill hundreds, thousands, millions of people or make them sick, I don't have to do anything special. I just get to spread it all over everyone and wait till they tell me something's wrong.
Well, I worked with 3 or 4 chemical companies earlier in my career. They are responsible people. If a chemical is going to kill people outright, not even they are going to introduce it.
Okay,
you know,
yes.
Totally
yes.
blatantly obvious.
You open the can and everyone dies, bad chemical. Like,
very
I get it.
chemical.
But
they're
if
in
we
a
die
situation
over time,
where they're in a situation where they may be investing $100 million to develop a new line of chemicals, or even 10 million. They think it's safe. Then, you know, their initial tests, they test something for 3 months, then test it on animals for 3 months. No ill effects on the rats in their first 3 months or even 6 months. Maybe the ill effects would only show up after 2 years. They put it in the environment, no ill effects immediately evident for the 6 months of the year they tested. But if it becomes extremely popular, extremely widely used, like glyphosate has, it may become much, much, much more prevalent in the environment than was done in their tests. And it's there much longer term. So the exposure is much longer term than they were even able to test. So it is tricky. You know, how exactly do you test for toxicity? What bar are you going to set? Our argument is the bar is too low now in the US. The bar is higher in Germany. If I have an aerosol can in the US, I can throw it anywhere, or probably a good number of them get thrown out on the street or thrown, just thrown anywhere. You see some of them in estuaries, floating because somebody threw them into a riverbed. They might have used it on a picnic and just, throw it away.
Yes.
If we were at least where the European Union was, at least where Germany was, the US would be a lot better off.
Yeah, if there was anybody on this that watched earlier in the day, as American citizens and citizens of the world, we need to stand up for ourselves and expect better. We need to expect to be treated better. We're not garbage. You can't just poison us slowly. We're not married to the government. Not that your husband can poison you slowly, but
exactly.
You know what I mean. I love my husband. Hi, honey. I know you're watching. Really, we have to stand up. We are the people. We the people. And if we don't stand up and start expecting more and demanding more, they are going to kill us by slowly poisoning us with glyphosate or Teflon or whatever other things that they have, or just letting us die of COVID because it's important that we go get our nails done and go bowling, or by whatever crazy wars that they want to fight over oil. And I'm pretty sure that since the oil prices dropped down very low, there should be some oil wars happening anytime. Yes, we have to stand up and demand better for ourselves. I'm worth saving my own life. That's why I'm here. And I hope that other people feel that way too. Please vote. If you are a Democrat who lives abroad, you can go to votefromabroad.org and request an absentee ballot. Please do it as soon as possible. Do not wait. We don't know what the future holds. If someone had asked me in January, would we all be on lockdown in April? I wouldn't have guessed this. I would have guessed a lot of things, but not this. So we don't know what September or October is going to be like. So please request your ballot now. If you happen to be watching this and you live in the United States, please go to iwillvote.com and you can check and see if you're registered. People overseas can check and see if they're registered also. And if you're not registered, then please register yourself. And then people that live in the continental United States or the United States, I won't exclude Alaska and Hawaii, they should ask for an absentee ballot also. Because again, you don't need to be standing in a line for I don't know how long with strangers waiting to vote. You can vote from home. So please, Jim, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We should probably, are there any questions?
I had one quick thing to say that I like very much Jim's idea of continuing the conversation. DA has several little pockets of interested people in the environment. We have our women's group, and you have your climate policy group, and Mark is doing fabulous things in Brazil, and Jana is doing things. I think we need to talk. I think we need to get together, and we'll do that, okay? And we'll see if we can help people, our wonderful community around the world, to keep updated on this. One of the comments in the chat box was that people would like to have a more regular webinar or something, maybe not 16 hours long. Yeah,
this will be the probably last time we have a 50th anniversary of Earth Day celebration.
But we've got a lot to talk about. But anyway, that's, and I think the platform work is so important. I keep saying since this morning, it's the platform, not the politicians. And if you're not happy with the politician, look at the platform. Because those people who say that both parties are alike, or I don't like this candidate, look at the platform. Look at the Republican platform and look at ours. And I'm so proud of what you've created, Jim, you and your group, and it makes me feel proud and makes me feel calm, because I think if somebody reads that darn thing,